I would love to help you with your sewing project. If you would like to be entered into an online sewing consultation with me, click here to subscribe. I'm Martha Hunt, and I love to sew. See if you can see the little curves and the little jewels. I had my own sewing business for about 7 years, but now I have grandkids, so I've quit my business, but still wanted to have people able to learn how to fix things. We were able to use the sleeves as they were, so that made it easier. This is a great t-shirt to be wearing because you can see where the sleeves should go, where the shoulder line is. Find a pattern with shoulders and sleeves closest to the size of the dress. We'll get pattern piece number 7, which is the sleeve. This is a long sleeve, but it will have markings so that you can make it shorter. If you need to make sleeves, use a basic sleeve pattern. But instead of cutting it straight across, make it 3 to 4 inches long at the underarm and curve it up in the middle, similar to what you see here. This will create room for adequate arm movement. Line or hem the sleeves and sew the underarm seam. When you have a dress that does not have sleeves or doesn't have shoulders, you lose a lot of opportunity for making it creative and beautiful and just a little more feminine and fun. So I'm basting in the sleeve with a little extra seam because I gave it a large seam in the pattern, and the original seam on the sleeve is small. So we'll baste it in, see if this one sleeve fits and make the pattern to match. Then we'll be good for the outside. I've got the sleeve put in. I was a little worried that it was going to be too tight on you, so I sewed it in way far out, and you will have plenty of room and give you a little better underarm coverage. Okay, so now that we know how it fits Avalon, I'm going to unpick everything that I just did. So I'm going to see the basting threads here, and I'm going to use this blue chalk just to mark where I sewed it in so I can take it back out and then sew it in by machine. The sleeves were a little bit big under the arm. The sleeve's out now, so we're going to open up the underarm seam here and sew about the same amount in, and then unpick the original one, open it up, and press it. There's the new seam. We'll pull out the threads of the old one. So we've got the underarm seam all shrunk, and I have put in a gathering thread here. Once we get it pinned in, this part right here will just pin straight in, and that will pin at the top. The same on this side, and then we will pull the thread and start gathering to make it fit, and we'll try to make sure that the gathers are even, and then when it's sewn in, it may have a little bit of gathering, or it may just be nice and smooth, but it still needs to have that little bit of fullness so it will let your arm move around. And put a pin so I know where the center is. So the first thing we're going to do is match the underarm seam to the sleeve underarm seam and pin it in place. Where we folded it in half and put the pin in, that's going to be the shoulder seam spot to match. And we need to look on the inside and see there's our little blue line, so we need the seam way down there. Now you can see there's a little B on here. That's to help me remember that that's the back side of the sleeve. And then this part that's smooth, that we don't have the gathering line on, pin that in, making sure it lines up in the right place. We're trying to make sure that we have this little sewing line lined up with the blue line on the back here. So do that on the front and the back. And then we will start pulling the thread and gathering up the cap or top of the sleeve. So here's the loose side. I'm going to pull it pretty tight so that it will gather clear over on the far side where the knot is. Then I'll hold it and see, okay, that's about the right size of the sleeve. Looks like it's landing okay. This fabric's gathering up nicely. Now it matches. You can see it's not very even. But we'll wrap the thread around the this pin so it doesn't go anywhere. And then we can move the gathers up and down a little bit more evenly and pin them in place. The sleeve's gonna look funny because it's on the outside, but once we've sewn it, we'll flip that over. So here you can see that we've sewn right along the line we marked. Here's the outside, inside. And now we're going to remove the basting thread. And then we're going to trim up the excess. So you don't want a whole lot of extra fabric, a little bit in there, in the way of your arm. And then we're going to use a little piece of fabric. This is stretchy from a different sewing project, but bias tape would work just as well. And we're going to sew that around just barely in the seam. Flip it over and then stitch it down so it will have a finished edge. Here's before and here's after.